Ireland home first, followed by the Kawasaki's of Andrew, Cox, Human and Dalton. Schilling and Thorne would be the first off amongst the cars the next morning, with another 5 space frames among the top 8. Saturday morning dawned hot and dry yet again. Competitors had a grueling 508-kilometre race ahead of them. Leaders Schilling and Thorne had the advantage of no dust to impede their progress. For those awaiting the countdown, the biggest problem would be visibility in the hazardous dust. With not even the slightest breeze, competitors would often have to rely on skill and nerve to see them through the race. See what we mean? On terra firma, the Schilling-Thorne team was going flat out, unhindered by anything or anyone. Behind them, Degener was at full taps in the BP Chenoweth. Nothing can stop this driver when he's in full flight, not even a brazen thorn bush or two. Meanwhile, Linton Draper and Mike Pretorius were going like the clappers in their Isuzu, which had been 6th overall on Friday. This vehicle is capable of awesome speeds, and at top speed looks nothing less than frightening. Trouble for the Toyota dealer team Kasi Kutsier and Richard Leek, less than 30 kilometers from the start line. But for Cecil and Michael Finchem's Toyota Land Cruiser, life couldn't be better. They started 11th that morning and went on to finish a respectable 3rd in class at the end of the day. Also doing well were Wilfried Veslau and Dagmar Blankner, whose worst nightmare came true later on when they had 2 punctures in a row.
Yesterday was a luck for me. I had no brakes, so I had to win, I think. Made me go much faster with no brakes. Maybe today, if it's possible, I'll do it again. Like it.
Today it's a long way. At least it does sound be that good. I'm only starting behind really. There's only one bike. I'm just going to try and stay there and see in the last maybe 100 k's if I can close it yet.
3rd off the line sometimes could be a good place to be because you can just play the waiting game, you know? And that's basically what I'm going to do today.
Starting 2 hours after the cars, the motorcyclists had their strategies all worked out. First off was Ireland, blazing a trail of dust in his wake. For Andrews in 2nd position, thick white dust would be a major deterrent in any overtaking maneuvers. In these conditions, as Alfie Cox said earlier, the waiting game was all important. Waiting for someone ahead of you to make a mistake, have a puncture or wrong slot could be worth your while. Travelling as one, Dalton and his machine coursed a speedy but dusty path through the wastelands of the drought-ravaged Kalahari. Despite being on the smaller 200cc machine, Yuri Human was holding his position well and went on to take a 3rd overall and 1st in class at the end of the day. Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne were still holding their lead in the Motortech Raceco. Their progress through the Paputatswana villages excitedly monitored by the local population. In their wake, Degener and Bell were still attempting to close that gap, but their smaller engine BP Chenoweth found it almost impossible. Herman Sulwald and Mossy Mostert were sitting in a healthy 7th position initially in the Sulwald Vervoer Raceco, but mechanical problems retired them midway through the race. Although he was meant to start 2nd, Walk had left only 19th after alternator problems delayed him, but tenacity and V8 power ruled, and it didn't take him long to ease his way through the ranks back to an eventual 2nd position overall. Bad luck had plagued this team throughout the year, and despite a 4th in class on Friday, Arpi Reyneke and Lucas Dreyer battled throughout Saturday to maintain the pace in their Sasol Ford Courier. Some guys have all the luck. Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer had such a smooth run in their VW Beetle, they never got out of the car once. Breslau and Blankner were running an experimental gearbox in their Astoria Bakery VW bread van, and so far, so good. Free State pair, Van Vuren and Pelser, were having a trouble-free run, and despite pressure from the rear, would win class and category honours at the end of the day. SVM team Cliff Barker and Mike Redden were to perform as consistently as ever, and they would later cross the finish line 7th overall and 1st in Class 6. As for the locals, the bigger the dice, the better. In an area where drought has brought nothing but suffering this year, the light relief of an off-road race was exactly what was needed. Meanwhile, Super Tyres Suzuki rider Willie Ireland was powering his way through the dusty countryside in his own spectacular style. No competitors close enough to threaten him. Behind him, Patrick Andrews was giving it his best shot on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki, but it wouldn't be enough. Chasing Andrews and looking for the slightest chance to overtake him was a determined Alfie Cox. In turn, hanging on the cable behind him was a flat-out Yuri Human, holding his lead among the 200 riders. Hilton Hayward had slipped down from 6th to 10th position, but was still second in the 500 class on the cable lock KTM. Riding together for a while were Kevin Tebbett on the Sun City Suzuki, a previous winner of this event, and Kevin Fisher on the Rock Oil KTM. Unfortunately, Fisher later retired. Back in the leading space frame, the going was still good as Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne had yet to sight any opposition to their Porsche engine car. At the service area, crews and spectators anxiously awaited their teams. Degener and Bell would be needing more than just the customary refuel. Stop. Robbie Walk was going like a rocket, having made up tremendous time since his delayed start that morning. From a deceptively relaxed area, the pits are suddenly transformed into a hive of activity. And while off-road pits wouldn't exactly threaten Mansell and his boys, they're efficient enough in their own way. Many hands reportedly make light work, and if there's ever a case of too many cooks spoiling the broth, no one's telling.
Nee, plak net hier vas, hoor. Dis al. Ons gerol nou die ding uitgeval, ek wil hom net vas hê. Jom gou af.
Out in the bush, Willie Ireland was still on his way to the refuel point, with both he and his Super Tyres Suzuki taking strain in the dehydrating conditions. Cox had seen his chance and overtaken Andrews, and was intent on making up as many seconds as he could on the leader. Yuri Human had also passed Andrews, and the 200 rider was looking good at this stage. Andrews, who prefers the mountains of his home in Lesotho to the desert, later said his bike wasn't performing as it should be, but the two of them looked in excellent shape here. Teammate Brian Bontekoning had moved up from 14th overall to 5th position and was holding his own on his 200. Eric Dalton's 500cc machine must have felt incredibly heavy, but he was maintaining his 6th overall and 2nd in class. Natal's Richard Manning had started 6th in class on the Winston Yamaha, but he'd worked his way up 3 places. Almost there, and leaders Schilling and Thorne weren't about to let anyone even get close to the Motortech race car. Degener and Bell were still hanging in there in the BP Chenoweth. All it takes is one puncture to help you lose about 10 minutes, and no doubt they were wishing one on the leaders. Meanwhile, Walk was on their tail, the Super Pave Raceco sounding as good as new. He was eventually to come in 2nd overall, but a penalty would drop him down to 5th place. Youngsters Craig Hopkinson and Martin Spencer drove a superb race to be classified 3rd overall and 1st in Class 7 in their Beetle. This is when disaster struck the Lesotho team of Wilfried Veslau and Dagmar Blankner when they had 2 punctures in a row. Botswana team Rashid Noble and Joe Arby drove the Abe's Mitsubishi Pajero home to a well-earned 9th overall and 2nd in class. And away they go. Class 3's regular leaders are Dani and Gallo van der Merwe in their pink Toyota Hilux, and they won their class yet again, taking an 11th overall as well. Winners of last season's Rookie of the Year award, Wade and Grant Perrins, performed well in their HPI Insert Sandmaster, taking the honours for Class 10. The home stretch, and by now Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne could almost taste that bubbly. For Thorne especially, taking the checkered flag would be one hell of a moment. In 12 years of racing, he's never once won a national event. After 508 kilometers, there can't be a more welcome sight than the finish, especially if you're the winner. That flag, the champagne, the victor's laurels, and a sense of achievement only racing teams could possibly describe. A special moment for Schilling's wife and daughter.
Well, it just feels great. It just feels absolutely fantastic. 12 years, first national win. So, hell, I'm happy. I'm so happy. First, he drove like a star. We got lost 3 times, but short distances. And just fantastic. Really super.
And a special moment too for the winning driver and his navigator. It wasn't long before the leading biker arrived, and as expected, a delighted but exhausted Willie Ireland took the honours on his super tyres Suzuki.
I had a good time. I had a bit of a problem with the fuel. I kept on running out before I got to the fuel stops. So I managed to just freewheel in there all the time, and all the time I had to look back because I had Alfie and Patrick and all of them on my back. And so Alfie, towards the end, I saw him again, and then I started going again.
For Ireland, a well-earned victory. For the rest, they had to be content with runner-up status. Highlights of the Mmabatho Sun 500, round 6 of the Total GTE Off-Road Championship.